Miss Scott, I'm asking you, please leave. Your presence is making our other guests uncomfortable. The sentence sliced through the golden air like a blade. Zariah Scott stood frozen in her heels, her hands calm, her voice not yet spoken, but her eyes had already ignited. Every chandelier in the Wexley rooftop lounge suddenly felt like a spotlight. Tables turned. Glasses paused mid-air. A storm was forming in the silence, and she hadn't even said a word. Rewind 10 minutes earlier. The rooftop shimmered with elegance. Crystal glasses, saxophone jazz, and the murmur of Manhattan's elite swirling in designer gowns and cufflinks. This wasn't the kind of place where things got loud. No, here, everything sharp was said softly. Zariah had hoped for quiet tonight. Just dinner. No speeches, no headlines. She had chosen the black silk dress for subtlety. Her curls, gathered neatly. The evening wasn't about her name. It was about her and Cole, celebrating one small moment before the next political storm. But she forgot one thing. People like her were only welcome when they were silent. Across the marble host stand stood Ava Linton, lounge manager, mid-30s, perfect posture, and a face trained in polite rejection. "We're so sorry, Miss Scott," Ava had said earlier, fingers twitching slightly over the tablet. "We're overbooked. There's been a system error." Zariah didn't blink. She had confirmed the reservation twice. Cole had spoken to the maitre d' himself. She wasn't a woman who assumed malice until it introduced itself. Then came the glance. Ava had looked, just briefly, at a corner table near the fountain wall, where two well-dressed women in campaign pins were whispering while staring at Zariah. One of them pulled out her phone. There it was. Not a glitch, a decision. Cole leaned in slightly, his voice low and deliberate. "This is about her conference last week, isn't it?" Ava's mouth opened, but no words came. Zariah turned toward her fully, tone even, sharp as glass. "You know exactly who I am. And someone decided I shouldn't be seen here tonight." Ava's voice faltered. "Miss Scott, please understand. This establishment values inclusivity. Some guests find your positions inflammatory." "Inflammatory to whom?" Zariah asked, now fully composed. "To those who think inclusivity means excluding disagreement?" Ava shifted. "We're trying to avoid a situation." Zariah's voice dropped to a blade's whisper. "There already is one." At that moment, someone watching from a nearby wall, young man, quiet, unassuming, slid his phone back into his coat. He didn't work for the hotel. He wasn't with security. But his eyes hadn't left Zariah once. And he wasn't the only one. Servers paused. Guests stared. Cole's eyes stayed locked on Ava. But Zariah? Zariah stood tall, not with rage, but with precision. "You've made your choice," she said. "Let's see how your definition of inclusivity plays in the headlines tomorrow." Then, without shouting, she turned and walked, not stormed, through the lounge, each step deliberate, measured, and heavy with something louder than words. Dignity. And as she walked away, silence wrapped around the room, tighter and tighter. A story had just begun, and it would not be told by the hotel. Zariah Scott had been here before. Not the rooftop, not this hotel, though she had dined in plenty of places like it. What she had felt in that moment, being asked, politely, to leave because her very presence made others uneasy. That she knew far too well. Downstairs, the Manhattan streets pulsed with Friday night energy. Horns, laughter, the metallic sigh of traffic lights changing. But 40 floors above, the air had gone thin. She and Cole walked slowly toward the elevator, neither speaking. She didn't need to look at him to know he was watching every face they passed, his body just a breath more alert than usual. Cole's calm was deceptive. Built like a runner, moved like a soldier, and guarded like a vault. As they reached the elevator doors, he pressed the button and finally asked, "You good?" Zariah exhaled through her nose. "I'm tired," she said. "Not of them, of this." He nodded. "Same script, new cast." "A beat. I shouldn't have come," she muttered. Cole turned to her fully. "No," he said firm. "You should have. You don't need permission to exist, especially not here." The elevator pinged. Before they stepped in, Zariah looked back, just once. Through the tall glass windows, she could still see the lounge. Ava was gone from the host desk. The campaign pin women were laughing again, but a few faces hadn't gone back to their food. A server stood near the bar, eyes fixed on the empty space Zariah had left. A couple near the window were whispering, but the woman was clearly agitated, her hand gripping her napkin too tight. And then there was him, the young man in the gray jacket, leaning casually against a column, sipping water. He hadn't looked away once. Something in Zariah stirred. Curiosity, maybe. Or warning. The elevator doors closed. 20 minutes earlier, she had been in that same elevator, laughing. Her and Cole had met after her speech at the Meridian Institute, a quiet conference where Zariah had gone off script. Instead of reading the prepared, safe statement her team wrote, she had spoken from the heart. True inclusion doesn't mean silencing the inconvenient voices. If your version of justice only serves those who agree with you, it's not justice, it's branding. That clip had gone viral in all the wrong corners. Half the internet praised her as the voice we didn't know we needed. The other half called her everything from dangerous to traitor in heels. Cole had watched from the second row. He never blinked once. She noticed. Now, 2 years later, they were still together. Tougher, quieter, but always aligned. Tonight was supposed to be simple. A private dinner, a glass of wine, a brief escape from news cycles, political blowback, and the rising pressure of carrying too many expectations from people she didn't ask to represent. Instead, she was once again made into a villain, or a symbol, or both. As the elevator descended, Cole spoke. "That guy in the gray coat. You saw him too," Zariah said, already 2 steps ahead. "He wasn't just a guest, he was watching." Zariah nodded. "Phone stayed out the entire time. No flash, no filming, just recording." Cole frowned. "Press? Maybe. Or worse, activist with a Substack." They exchanged a look. "That's tomorrow's problem," she said, voice flat. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The problem had already started. The clip, if it existed, was already halfway to virality. And this time, Zariah wouldn't be holding the microphone. Not yet. It dropped at 7:12 a.m. No headlines, no tags, just a plain gray tweet with a link and 4 words. This happened last night. No one knew who a Grey Watcher YC was, no blue check, no followers, no bio. But the attached article was a scalpel. When inclusion becomes exclusion, the quiet humiliation of Zariah Scott. Byline. Anonymous. It began without anger. No all-caps outrage, no partisan venom. Last night, I watched a black woman, educated, composed, and peaceful, be told she wasn't welcome in a space she had paid for. Not for her behavior, but for her beliefs. There was no shouting, no threats, just rejection, draped in politeness, handed down like a folded napkin. They called it inclusion. I call it cowardice. It described the moment in surgical detail. The cold smile of the lounge manager, the tension in the air, the way Zariah didn't raise her voice, the way others looked away, the way one man didn't. Her name is Zariah Scott. You probably know her, or think you do. Within the first hour, the tweet had 1,800 retweets. By 9 a.m., Zariah Scott and Inclusion 4, who were trending across the East Coast. And by noon, the story had slipped from Twitter and into everything. Zariah stood in her kitchen, phone still in hand, unread messages piling up like rubble. She hadn't opened the article yet. Cole had. Twice. He handed her a cup of black coffee, but said nothing. Her phone buzzed again. Z, they're tagging you in that article. You need to respond. Maya, Communications Director. You seeing this? I told you that guy wasn't a guest. Cole, again. MSNBC just picked it up. You should call in. Her old law professor. Zariah sat down, heart steady, mind not. She finally clicked the link. Every sentence cut her open, not because they were false, but because they were true, and because she hadn't written them. She had no control over how it sounded, how it landed, what it meant. She had lost the microphone, but her face was still on the poster. The first real backlash came by 1:17 p.m. Someone clipped her Meridian Institute speech from 2 months earlier and paired it with a shot of her leaving the Wexley Hotel. It was labeled, "When Privilege Masquerades as Persecution." The tweet was from a verified account with 300K followers. In an hour, it had 2.3 million views. Cole watched her pace the hallway, fingers clenched, shoulders rising with every breath. "They're twisting it," she said, "turning it into something it wasn't." "I know. I didn't ask to be saved. I didn't ask for him to write about it." Cole hesitated. "It's not about what you asked for. It's about what they saw." Zariah stopped. Her reflection caught in the window. Sharp lines, tense jaw, eyes that had seen this cycle too many times. "They don't want the truth," she said. "They want a narrative. And right now," Cole added, "it's not yours." A pause. Yet. Somewhere across the city, in a cafe with slow Wi-Fi and peeling brick walls, a man in a gray coat sat at a scratched table. He was quiet, anonymous, and his inbox was full. "Are you the one who wrote it?" "Interview request. CNN. DM me for freelance rate. Vice." "This is the article we've been waiting for. Thank you." He didn't answer any of them. He just opened a blank document, typed a new title, "Why I Wrote About Zariah Scott," and began again. Zariah, meanwhile, opened her laptop. For the first time in days, she clicked into her own drafts folder. She stared at a speech she hadn't delivered, one she had written and shelved. Title, "They're the Price of Not Belonging?" She read the first line. "They'll tell you you're welcome, until you walk through the door." She closed the laptop without saving. This wasn't over, but it wasn't hers anymore. Not yet. Have you ever had someone else tell your story before you could? What would you do if the world saw a version of you that you never wrote? Share your thoughts below. Your voice might be the one that brings this conversation back to truth. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, watching, waiting. By the third day, the world had stopped debating Zariah Scott and started dissecting her. TV panels compared her tone to other black women in power. Commentators said she was too composed or not emotional enough. Some called her brave. Others called her calculated, and none of them had ever spoken to her. Cole sat across the living room, scrolling through the latest wave of headlines. He didn't read them out loud anymore. She could feel them in his sighs. Zariah was curled on the corner of the couch, hoodie pulled tight, legs tucked under her like she was trying to disappear into the fabric. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look. Cole did. "Maya, you need to respond. Silence is killing your image. You're either for something or against something. Pick." Maya, 2 minds later. "I booked you for a podcast with Hallie Monroe. She's neutral. Trust me." Maya, 5 mins later. "Please don't make me beg." Zariah buried her face in her knees. She didn't want to be for anything right now. She wanted quiet. Stillness. The kind of silence that didn't follow her around like a judge. She hadn't told Cole this, but that morning, her scholarship offer to speak at Northbridge Law had been postponed indefinitely. The email was full of kind phrases, Unforeseen circumstances, reevaluating criteria, rescheduling window TBD. It wasn't a door slammed shut. It was a door quietly locked. "You should eat something," Cole said softly. Zariah didn't answer. He sat beside her and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. But she didn't return the pressure either. "You're not alone in this," he whispered. She looked at him then. Not with anger, but with that terrifying expression people get when they're too tired to cry. "I feel like I am," she said, "even when you're here." Cole's shoulders sank. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. That night, she walked out onto the balcony alone. The city stretched out before her like a million blinking eyes. She used to love New York, the way it never slept, the way it hummed with ambition and anger. Now it felt like it was staring back at her, asking, "So who are you really?" She opened Twitter. Bad idea. The top tweet was a video edit mocking her Meridian speech, overlaid with laughing emojis, sound effects, and a flashing caption. "Zaria Scott, professional victim." She closed the app, but the words stayed. Victim, as if that was the only role she could ever play. At 1:14 a.m., she opened a blank document. Title, "Maybe It's Time to Shut Up." She stared at it for 5 full minutes, then deleted the file. At 1:33 a.m., a soft knock came at the door. Not the front door, the study. Cole. He didn't enter, just leaned his head in. "You okay?" Zariah turned from the screen. Her voice was rough. "Do you ever wonder what it's all for?" Cole didn't answer right away. Then, "Every day, but I don't stop." Zariah managed a half smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "I think I used to believe in something," she said. "Now I just feel like a symbol people either want to protect or destroy." Cole stepped in, knelt down in front of her. "You're not a symbol. You're a human being, and you don't owe the world anything tonight." She nodded, but inside a darker question whispered, "What if they were right? What if I was never meant to lead, just to fall?" Have you ever doubted yourself in front of the world, while the world watched in silence? What helped you hold on? Share below. Someone reading might need your story right now. She hadn't thought about it in years. Not the meeting, not the counselor's voice, not the hallway that smelled like daffodils and pool chlorine. But that night, with her apartment soaked in silence and the city blinking outside the window, it came back, like a shadow that had never truly left. She was 16. Ravensbury Academy. One of 5 black girls in a school that felt like a museum. Polished floors, stone archways, dead authors framed in gold. Zariah had grades, she had trophies, she had poise, but apparently she didn't have relatability. "The committee appreciates your application," the counselor had said, voice soft, rehearsed. "But there's concern your background may not resonate well in an international setting." That word again. Background, as if hers was a malfunction. She had nodded politely, thanked them, walked out, then locked herself in the nearest bathroom and threw up everything she'd swallowed that semester. No one saw her. She made sure of that. Back in the present, Zariah sat upright in bed, jaw clenched. The shame wasn't what hit her. It was the obedience. How easily she had accepted it. How quickly she had learned to make rejection look graceful. Her mother had said nothing that day. Zariah came home with red eyes and silence, said it was allergies. Dinner was salmon and quiet. She remembered pushing broccoli across her plate, trying to decide if it was worth mentioning. Then finally, just barely above a whisper, "I didn't get the scholarship." Her mother didn't look up from her legal brief. "Then you'll find another one." A pause. They said I wasn't relatable. Now her mother did look up. Slow, steady, neutral. "Then next time," she said, "make them listen harder." That was it. No hug, no fire, just instruction. The kind you carve into your bones because you don't get anything softer. Zariah had taken it like scripture. For years, that was the playbook. Stay calm, stay sharp, never let them write your headline for you. But now she wasn't even holding the pen. At 6:42 a.m., Cole found her in the kitchen. She was already dressed. Black slacks, gray blouse, no makeup, eyes clear. "You're up early," he said. "I'm going to the studio," she replied. "Hallie Monroe's podcast." Cole blinked. "I thought you turned it down." "I changed my mind." He stepped closer. "Why?" Zariah poured coffee like it was nothing. "Because I remembered who taught me how to survive. And I think it's time I learned how to speak." Across the city, in a study lined with law books and framed court photos, Marissa Scott sat at her desk. Her daughter's name was everywhere. She never liked hashtags, never trusted viral movements. But this morning something felt different. She clicked the podcast link. No expression, no commentary. And for the first time in decades, she didn't reach for a pen. She just listened. 8:03 a.m., inside the booth. The mic glowed red. Hallie leaned forward, voice quiet but direct. "Zariah, you've been silent all week. Some say that's weakness. Others say it's tactical. What do you say?" Zariah looked at the mic. Then at her own reflection in the booth glass. The hesitation lasted less than a second. "I say silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's survival. And sometimes it's the only space you have left to remember who you are." Hallie blinked. "You're not angry." Zariah smiled. "Real. Clean. Unapologetic. I'm not done yet." Have you ever buried a moment just to realize it shaped the way you speak, live, and fight? What voice helped raise yours? Drop it in the comments. Your memory might be someone else's turning point. It started with a draft. No hashtags, no slogan, no PR polish. Just her. Zariah sat at her desk, fingers poised, breath steady. She wasn't writing a statement. She wasn't writing for the press. She was writing for the mirror. "My name is Zariah Scott. A few days ago, I was politely asked to leave a space I had paid for, without raising my voice, breaking any rules, or violating any code of conduct. I didn't fight back. I didn't scream. I walked away. But make no mistake, what happened that night wasn't about peace. It was about power, and the fear of what I represent to the people who still expect me to shrink." She posted it at 7:03 a.m. No fancy background, just white text on black. Within minutes, it caught fire, not because it was angry, but because it was calm. Sharp, unapologetically direct. By noon, the post had over 4 million views and had been shared by activists, professors, authors, and even 2 sitting congresswomen. But that wasn't the part that mattered most. That came at 2:47 p.m. Her phone buzzed with a DM request. Unknown user, no profile pic, no bio, just a message. "I work at the Wexley. I was there. I have footage, and I think you should see it." Zariah blinked. Cole sat beside her as she clicked the link. It wasn't the security footage. That had been wiped, probably by management. This was different. A phone recording, low angle, grainy, but the audio clear as day. She pressed play. The clip began moments before the confrontation. Zariah and Cole seated, laughing softly. Nothing loud, nothing out of place. Then the manager's voice entered. "Ma'am, some of our patrons are concerned about the tension your presence is creating." Zariah, "My presence is creating tension?" Manager, "We're asking if you'd be willing to relocate, to help maintain harmony." Zariah, "I've said nothing, done nothing. Why should I move?" Manager, after pause, "Because this is a premium space, and your presence is provocative." Cole paused the clip. Silence filled the room. Then Zariah stood up. She didn't pace, didn't scream. She just stared out the window, fingers curling slightly at her sides. "He said it, out loud." Cole nodded. "And now the world's going to hear it. They called Maya, told her everything." By 6 p.m., the full video was edited, subtitled, and queued for public release. Not by a news network, not by an influencer, by Zariah herself. She added no music, no slow fades, just truth. Posted with one caption. "Here's what power sounds like when it thinks no one is listening." Across the city, Marissa watched the video alone. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just nodded once, At 9:17 p.m., Hallie Monroe messaged, "Phones are lighting up. Want to come back tomorrow?" Zariah replied, "No, I have one more thing to do first." "What thing?" Cole raised the same question as she shut her laptop. She smiled. "Remember the man in the gray coat?" He did. Turns out, he wasn't the only one watching. When the system tries to erase your voice, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them hear exactly what they said. Have you ever recorded the truth, even when no one believed you? Share your moment. It might be the proof someone else needs. The conference room smelled like wood polish and false promises. Zariah stepped inside, flanked by Maya and a young attorney from the firm she'd hired just 48 hours earlier. At the far end of the table sat two corporate lawyers in navy suits, one from the hotel chain, one from the PR agency they'd scrambled to bring in. Beside them, the Wexley general manager, still pale, still rehearsed, and across from him, Captain Wyatt Langford. The pilot, still in uniform, still smug. Zariah's pulse kicked once in her throat, then leveled. She didn't sit yet. She looked at all of them and waited, let the room feel her silence. The first to speak was the lawyer from the chain. "Ms. Scott, first we want to express our regret for any misunderstanding." Zariah raised one eyebrow. "Misunderstanding?" He hesitated, then tried again. "We believe this incident was unfortunate, but not representative of our company's values." Maya didn't blink. The attorney beside Zariah cleared her throat. "We'd like to begin by requesting access to any footage you may have before we engage further." Zariah finally sat down. "You don't need my footage. You should check your own cameras. Oh wait, they just happened to malfunction." Langford shifted in his chair. She saw it, just a flicker. That was enough. "You know," Zariah said, tone steady, "when I walked away from that lounge, I told myself it wasn't worth it, that it would disappear, that I should let it go." She leaned forward. "But then I remembered what silence costs people like me." Langford opened his mouth. She cut him off. "And what it buys people like you?" The room froze. Even Maya didn't move. The hotel lawyer forced a tight smile. "Ms. Scott, perhaps it's best if we move toward a resolution. We are open to discussing a financial settlement, as well as a signed statement clarifying." Zariah stood up again. "You want me to sign a narrative you wrote. You want to pay for silence and sell it as closure." She looked directly at the pilot. "But I didn't come here for an apology." Langford folded his arms. "Then what do you want?" Her eyes narrowed. "I want everyone else who's ever sat in that lounge and been made to feel like an intruder, to know they weren't crazy, that someone saw it, heard it, and said it out loud." The hotel PR rep shifted nervously. The lawyer scribbled something on a legal pad. "Too late." Zariah turned to Maya. "Release the video." Maya blinked. "Now?" Zariah nodded. They had their chance to say it behind closed doors. Now we'll let the world listen. Later that night, the video dropped at 7:46 p.m., but this time it wasn't just Zariah's post. It came with a time-stamped log of complaints from other guests, a partial memo leaked by an employee, screenshots of internal training guides that, when read carefully, showed a clear pattern. And the clip? It hit harder the second time, because now people were watching with eyes wide open. By 9:15 p.m., the hashtags were trending in 12 countries. By midnight, Wexley's parent company had disabled comments across all platforms. In a quiet living room across the city, Wyatt Langford poured himself a glass of whiskey and turned on the news. There she was, Zariah Scott, on every channel. Not yelling, not crying, just speaking, and the world was finally listening. But someone else was watching too. A young woman in her early 20s. Brown hair. In a quiet dorm room in Denver. She paused the video, zoomed in, eyes wide, then whispered, "Dad?" What happens when your voice cracks the silence for others too? Have you ever seen the truth set off a chain reaction? Drop a comment. You never know whose world might shift because of it. The press conference was held in the same ballroom where Zariah was once asked to leave. Same chandeliers, same velvet carpet, Same glass doors that had once closed behind her like a verdict. But today, they opened for her, and the room was full. Journalists, advocates, former Wexley employees, people with stories, people with scars, people who had seen what happened and were ready to say, "Me too." Zariah stood at the podium. No notes, no teleprompter. Just the truth. Behind her, Maya, Cole, and her mother, Marissa Scott, arms folded, eyes proud but unreadable. Zariah adjusted the mic. This isn't about one hotel, or one manager, or one pilot. She paused. It's about the patterns we were trained to ignore, the systems that use politeness as a weapon, and the people who are always asked to move. Not because we're wrong, but because we're uncomfortable to witness. Silence. Then a thunder of cameras, applause, emotion. Zariah didn't flinch. She had come full circle. Later that night, in a smaller room with no cameras, someone knocked on the door. Marissa opened it. A young woman stood outside, maybe 21. Nervous, eyes sharp. "Is Zariah here?" she asked. Marissa looked her up and down. "Who's asking?" The girl hesitated. "My name's Leah Langford." Marissa froze. Zariah appeared at the hallway. She'd heard. I'm Wyatt Langford's daughter," Leah said quietly. "And I think you need to know something." They sat. Leah pulled out her phone, opened a private folder, scrolled to a voice memo. "I recorded my dad last week. He didn't know. He said some things about that night, about why he did what he did." Zariah stared at her. "Why are you showing me this?" Leah's voice trembled. "Because I'm tired of watching silence win. And because I don't want to be his version of legacy." She hit play. The voice on the recording was unmistakable. Wyatt Langford. Cold, measured. She reminded me of her. That lawyer from years ago, always pushing. I knew who she was before I walked in. I knew she'd raise hell if I didn't shut it down early. Then silence. Then, "I don't regret it. People like them, they never stop, unless you make them." Zariah's hands tightened, not around the phone, around the moment. She looked up. Marissa stood in the corner. Frozen, but not surprised. Leah said nothing more, just handed her the file and left. 2 weeks later, a special hearing was held. The recording was submitted. Langford was suspended pending full investigation. The hotel chain lost over $17 million in canceled contracts. But that's not the part people remember. They remember the last moment of that conference, when a young woman asked from the back row, "Zariah, now that justice is happening, what do you want next?" Zariah smiled. "Not justice. Not yet. Truth. All of it. The kind that doesn't end in headlines, but in reckoning." As she left the stage, Cole whispered, "You think they're ready for that?" Zariah didn't look back. "I'm not asking." But the camera lingered. One final cut. Back to Leah Langford. In her dorm room, watching the coverage, she closed the laptop, looked at her phone, opened a new message. To Zariah Scott. "There's more. Call me." When justice knocks, sometimes it's not the law that opens the door. It's the people who refuse to stay silent. Would you risk your peace to reveal the truth? Share your thoughts. Your voice may echo louder than you think.